Thanks for tuning in this week. The topic of discussion is the StarCityGames.com Open Atlanta, where I spent all week covering the event for StarCityGames.com. But first, the StarkingtonPost.com is accepting submissions for publication. Our editorial staff works with potential writers to help them hone their skills and gain wider exposure. We also provide a platform for promoting your own Magic projects like blogs, podcasts, and websites. You can write about any subject you like, and we read and respond to every submission we receive. You'll find contact information on the StarkingtonPost.com, or if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be in the video description. Now, on with the show. Rise of the Eldrazi bit off a big chunk of design space that has arguably never been attempted before in Magic history. The R&D folks behind the set decided to push three elements Magic players are usually loath to play: auras, giant fatties, and walls, creatures with defender. The StarCityGames.com Open in Atlanta demonstrated the people behind the set accomplished making at least two of the three palatable for competitive players. Witness the intense popularity of Wall of Omens, which saw a ton of copies in the top 8, including a full playset in both copies of the tournament-winning deck. As for fatties, at least Emrakul and Ulamog are seeing play in Standard, and when you expand the scope of the weekend's tournaments, you'll find even more copies of the giant monsters at other large-scale cash events. Give WotC some credit, somehow they've managed to achieve the hard-to-believe with Rise of the Eldrazi. The finals of the Legacy Open were hard to watch at times, and I know because I was there. They were certainly exciting, but it was clear David Mayer and his Ant deck were in over their heads and outmatched mentally by Jerry Thompson. Now, to be fair to David, many players would find themselves outmatched facing down Jerry T in the finals of any tournament. Ultimately, Mayer's deck proved better in the matchup and he was able to take the title, but throughout the finals, Jerry leaned into him real hard by jawing David into being nervous and second-guessing many of his own plays. This is something the best players in the world can do. Be so confident in their play they can comment on their opponents and force them to misplay while convincing their opponents to play along through a congenial, friendly tone. David was visibly shaken on camera at times and was clearly nervous to be in the finals, and the top 8 in general if his Dark Ritual Go play was any indicator from the semifinals. It was one of those finals where you were watching the better player lose despite physically outplaying the eventual winner. However, David does deserve some credit for a few plays on the weekend. There was the match, for example, in which he played against a separate Reanimator deck earlier in the event and successfully resolved the Sadistic Sacrament. He went through the library and after much consideration realized his opponent only had 3 creatures left to reanimate. Up on the card count, David opted to exile the creatures and deck his opponent as his win condition. As AJ Satcher pointed out from the GGsLive.com booth, most players would miss that play entirely, so kudos to David for being able to figure it out on the fly. More importantly, the infamous Dark Ritual play that he made against Christian Valenti's Goblin Charbelcher deck in the semifinals. The misplay was as glaring a mistake as you can make in that situation, and will no doubt earn David some teasing down the road. Essentially what happened is that he created a game plan, cast Dark Ritual, realized he'd messed that game plan up, and simply passed the turn. But you can learn something from how he handled the game after he had made that mistake. On the turn it happened, the plan David created was based around casting a not quite lethal Tendrils of Agony. But when he realized the second copy of his Tendrils was in his sideboard, rather than amplify his mistake by continuing down a plan he knew to be erroneous, David accepted his mistake, wasted the Dark Ritual, and recalculated a different plan. The second plan let him win to take the match, even without the Dark Ritual, and therein lies the lesson. You're just as capable of making a mistake as David did, particularly in a high-profile match televised live for thousands of dollars after as many as 20 or more rounds of play. The question is whether you'll be able to suck it up and make the right play afterwards, or if you'll just tease Mr. Meyer from the living room couch while tilting yourself out of a title when it's you in his same shoes. David may not have been the most talented or qualified player in the top 8, but he worked hard through some handicaps to get there, and it would behoove you to learn from his example. Aaron Wayne had a rough weekend in Atlanta, picking up only 2 open points from showing up to both events. That means Alex Bertoncini was able to scoot past him for the lead in the open points race, and 2 other players are also heating things up, Taylor Raflowitz and Lewis Laskin. Both top-8 in Orlando, and with Laskin's win this past weekend, he's actually mimicking Aaron's records almost exactly. A win in Standard and a quarterfinals appearance in Legacy. Unfortunately for Lewis, Wayne also has a top 16 and I believe has notched up more tournaments in general. As for Taylor, right now he's a dark horse, but prior to Sunday he had top 16'd 3 open events in a row, including a top 8. Just pulling that grueling feat off is a pretty remarkable accomplishment in itself, considering 2 of those top 16s were back-to-back in Florida. Keep an eye on him to play spoiler if he manages to finally nab himself a title, but in their inaugural Open Series, StarCityGames really has an awesome race on their hands. The next StarCityGames.com Open event will be June 5th in Philadelphia, and I'll be there covering it just like all the other Open events this year. However, before then, you'll find me at Grand Prix Washington, D.C. before I leave for Pro Tour San Juan. I've always got time to meet fans, so if you're a reader, feel free to say hi. I'll be the coverage reporter with the Mohawk, and we'll see you next time.